Focusing on one time frame when you are trading can lead you down the wrong path. You might see a short-term blip that looks like an excellent buying opportunity, but the bigger picture, the overall trend, might be screaming sell. So combining time frames lets us cut through the noise and also helps us to get a much clearer direction of the dominant trend. Now, I like to use realistic examples of what's currently happening in the market. So let us consider this common pitfall. Now imagine that you are the trader who's just looking at this 4-hour downtrend on gold right now. Let's just say that's what you are solely focused on. You want to trade one time frame. At this point, you might consider jumping straight into a sell, but by taking a mere 2 minutes to look and analyze the lower time frames like the 1-hour chart, you will see a very critical piece of this trade developing right at this level. You can see a clear ranging pattern that is currently forming, and it's precisely right at the established trend line. Now, this alone strongly suggested that that selling pressure that we were seeing on gold was starting to fade away, and in reality, this was creating a beautiful stage for a significant bullish move. And you know what we did? We went straight into this gold, and this is how we capitalized on a very good move that generated over 1,200 pips on gold. Excellent. So what am I saying? I'm always getting this question: what time frame should I trade? All the time frames, in my opinion, are so important. Whenever you see a move that's happening, you should know that something is likely affected on either the smaller time frames or on the higher time frames. You need to still check if your setup is still intact and then adjust all those things accordingly. Now let's go onto our investing.com. Let's see what news we have for this current week. All right, that's interesting. In let's just say 30 minutes, we have Mr. Powell speaking. It's currently 2:15 and he's speaking at 1440, right? So that's it. We have Mr. Powell speaking, and that might cause the market to open with a gap for the new week, right? Let's just see what we have. Tomorrow is a holiday, as you can see right over here. And then this week, so today we have Powell speaking, tomorrow is a holiday, and on Tuesday, that is when we're going to have, in the morning, quite early, we're going to have, two head news. FOMC is on Wednesday. This is also going to cause the market to really, be fluctuating, and a lot of movements, a lot of volatility that we're going to see. And also on Friday, we'll have core PCE price index getting released, and PMI also. That's early in the morning. It's so surprising that we're having news getting released early morning for these particular days, but that's about it. That's what we're looking at for this current week. And now, before we dive straight on to the weekly analysis, we do have to talk about this US30 trade. That was absolutely beautiful. Both US30 and the NASDAQ, we did get good trades at the close of the week, so we were patiently waiting for US30 to close this gap that it had, which it did on Friday, and that was after some sort of tariff news was released and the market just started spiking down. So obviously, as you already know, we wait for the market to close the gap, and then that gap becomes our point of interest. We only now want to wait to see if we have enough confluence to then jump onto the trade, which we did. And I absolutely had shared this with the whole free signal group as a setup, just like I did on the NASDAQ. And on the NASDAQ, in the inner circle, we had this as a limit order, and it was not so pleasing because the limit order was triggered during the tariff release news, and that kind of let us into drawdown for quite some time before it then pushed up to the top. As you can see right here, it then pushed up to the top, and then in 20 minutes, as soon as the candlestick was closing like this with this big wick right over here, I just knew that enough momentum had stepped in. The buyers are not trying to go back down. They're really respecting this trend line that we're having here, and then I just had to let the trade run and do its thing. I didn't really tamper with it. We had our first take profit for 40 pips, and I then had to jump onto a mentorship class, as you can see over here. And in that moment, US30 was absolutely just pushing up. This trade would have given anyone who took the free signal setup over 350 pips. It was absolutely such a good move. As you can see, this is the 4-hour time frame that I'm actually using it for. The momentum it also created, we'll talk about that in a moment. It gave us a nice week right over there. It's indicating something right at that level after it closed the gap. I was just explaining all of this during my mentorship session, as you can see right over here. And obviously on the NASDAQ, also in the inner circle, you see that we ended up closing with 115, yes, 120 pips. I didn't updated this. It was like 120 pips on the NASDAQ. So it was an absolutely beautiful trade, which was good to eye, which was good to wait for. Right after that tariff news, just jump into the trade and we had absolutely obliterated it. Now, if you're new, find the channel for the first time, welcome. We trade the NASDAQ over here. If you're returning, welcome back. You already know what's up. Don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. So what we're gonna do is we'll dive right onto our chart. We have already checked our investing.com, so we already know what we're expecting, when we will expect volatility in the market. As you can see, this is our NASDAQ trade. It then kind of like retraced at this level, but as you can see right here, we had indeed secured our first and second take profit for 120 pips. And whoever then decides to hold according to your prop firm rules or according to your trading plan, you can hold over the weekend or you can close all of your trades. That's just according to how you want to actually do that. So overall, we had a good week. In the free group, in the inner circle too, we had good trades, but then it wasn't like those 1,000 pip moves. We're getting like 100 pips just to take profits, which is not something you'd really look forward to, but the market wasn't really moving with such big movements. So we should start on the NASDAQ, right? Let's just start on the NASDAQ and delete all of the things that we have. Now, the very first thing I want you to take notice of is NASDAQ is currently right at this level. It's ranging at a good bank zone according to whatever fundamental news releases today or tomorrow, or whoever wakes up and tweets whatever. It will now determine how the market is going to react to all of that. But what we are seeing right now, according to technical analysis, is we're at a good bank zone and NASDAQ has shown a good sign of rejection. We can see a clear week that it had formed at this level, but also not forgetting that it has this gap, just like you saw on US30 when the market absolutely closed the gap right over here. That's the exact same thing we would expect the NASDAQ to do, but that does not mean that it's going to close the gap tomorrow or it's going to close the gap we don't know that, right? US30 eventually then closed the gap whenever it wanted to, so it doesn't hinder us from looking for our setups. I wouldn't suggest that you now go and sell NASDAQ so that it comes and close the gap, because you don't know how far it's going to move up first before it decides to turn back. It can get to this level and eventually come back and close the gap, so you really don't want to do that. You want to always respect the overall trend. So you already know that we are trading stocks and the overall trend on this thing is an uptrend, right? If we go over onto the larger time frames, that's what you always have to keep in mind. We are trading something that's always moving up to the top, so that alone is already giving us a buy. We always look for bullish opportunities on these things. Right now, if we notice right here, we do not want to do the very basic things, which is like drawing your trend line. And as you can see, okay, this trend line is not really accurate. Right, so as you can see, this is our trend line right over here. You don't have to force it. You don't have to force the trend line to the price. You just have to draw it the way I always say trend lines are drawn. And if you draw it like this, you can clearly see that it still has movement for it to drop right over there, which makes this entry point a lot more trickier, right? Because we want the market to come and form a third leg at the trend line and at the same time closing this gap, at the same time retesting this level that it broke out of once upon a time. And then now this is a support that is coming to get retested. There's a high chance that this NASDAQ trade might drop down here and eventually move up to the top. When it does that, we don't know, right? But we want to trade according to what we are seeing. So in the short term, if you're going to attempt to buy NASDAQ or to do whatever you're going to do. But what I am going to do is I'll probably still want to attempt to look for trades here just when the New York session opens and get a little bit of volatility and get in and out of the market when I see those good setups. But then my overall trade is going to be right here if the market then gets to that level, right? So because of that week that it formed here, I'll probably expect a little retest and then a push right upward after. So as for the NASDAQ, that's exactly what I'm looking for, and I am not biased at all. I have a direct plan. Let's go straight to US30 and see what's happening. Now on US30, we want to just delete every single thing. I hope everyone did catch that trade and benefited, right? So US30, just like we were saying, has closed this gap that it had, and then now it has given us this week, showing us that this level is quite strong. This area here might just be a really strong spot, might just be a good support area that US30 just formed, and might want to just continue upward, right? So because of this alone, I think that this trade does have good confluence for US30. It's good. I think it is good to actually buy at this area. Now we don't know how it's going to end up opening, but we can see a wick, we can see a bullish candle. We just have to now find a good entry point on the lower time frames to see how we can continue moving up with that trade. Let's see on the daily time frame. So everything is just also the same like I explained on the NASDAQ, right? So it does still have this area though. Now it's going to now depend where you're going to place your stop loss, right? So your stop loss, I would suggest that stop loss would have to be below this area, this candle that we have here, because this is also still representing some sort of support, that we have. So if it comes into this area, it won't really be a wrong trade. So you don't want to place your stop loss in that zone, right? So that's what we'll be looking at, and we just want to ride USD up to the top. But then it does look 1, 2, 3, and it trades as a week. It closes like this. We will see how it opens. We don't know how it's going to open, and then that will determine whether we're going to buy the trade and expect it to come to this level, break out of it, and then go for the all-time highs. And what is gold telling us? Gold was absolutely beautiful for the whole entire week, and I hope you guys caught these trades with me. I did break them down really simple in the group, and I hope you all caught, especially this trade. What a beautiful trade we had. It did give us a little bit of a retracement, and you can see the trend line. It respected it at this level, and then now it has gone back up to the top. So after you've done all of these things on the daily time frame, you've gotten the overall direction of what's happening in the market. When I then saw gold breaking out of this area, you can clearly see I already have a limit order in the zone. I was expecting the market to come back. So when it broke out here, I was expecting it to come back into this area maybe, and then I'll take a buy on it. But it didn't really get to that area, and then ended up moving up to the top without me on this particular trade on gold. So that's still what I would be looking at for the short term, though. This is going to be for the short term, because you can clearly see that we are on the 1 hour and 30-minute time. So you do understand that it still has to respect this trend line. So if you're looking for entries for a short term buy, is to be finding them in this area, especially if it plays around now and comes back to this trend line with this zone. Then it would be a good trade to buy and push up to the top. Now this does not sound complicated at all. Now if you did enjoy this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button, turn your post notifications, and subscribe to the channel. You feel me? With that, it's been Tino, and I'll see you in the next lit video. Love you guys.